What do you mean? Yeah.
So, Kritik, would you like to go first with your initial reactions?
Yeah. I thought the movie was pretty interesting, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of got. I was worried it was going to be a conventional biopic kind of thing, and it really pulled what do you say, carpet, or it really, what do you say, surprised me with what it was trying to do, especially in the last third.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the policeman or Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was like full of contradictions, and that was a really interesting aspect for me.
True, true, true. And uh, for me, the film spoke quite differently, and I was very impressed with the screenplay. Uh, Starting probably at the 15-minute mark,
Hmm.
the narrator and the characters are sort of juxtaposed with one another. The narrator interjects between the lines of the characters, and that was very impressive. And that gives a very different notion of time and the consequential movement of the film.
Okay.
So, so there's like there were about three different uh, themes the film was trying to touch on. One being the the uh, very nature of how uh, stories are written, and the second being the mixing of reality and fiction, and the third is the common goose chase police story. Did you find any such commonalities and peculiarities in the film?
Yeah, I have to agree, and one more thing I just wanted to add that uh, the kind of since the policeman was written, he accepts that he's a fictional character that he was created. He still asserts that uh, he is himself. He made who he is. So I thought how something evolves beyond what you created also is a part.
True, true. And
Hello. I think you
hello,
might.
sorry, sorry. So speaking of the historical aspects of the film, and I'm sorry, I didn't quite get your last point. Can you repeat that?
The last point was how something which you have created can evolve by itself, and that was in relation to the police character.
True, and it seemed like the uh, Neruda character also begins to accept an organic evolution of his own characters toward the end.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. And I think Neruda was sort of a troubled character by himself, and there seemed like there was a dramatic mixing of uh, history and fiction solely for the purpose of storytelling.
Yeah, I'm a little bit troubled, and I'm not sure which part of the movie is, at least with regards to Neruda's personal life. I don't know what is true and what is false.
True, true, true. And there's also one more aspect the film touches quite, um, I mean, as a nature of its theme, and that is the general nature of how uh, uh, politicians and especially writers are quite different from what they seem to be. There were frequent mentions of how the union workers and the Communist Party members are by themselves bourgeoisie, and bourgeoisie is essentially the group the communists essentially struggle against.
Hmm.
So that was quite interesting.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know much about Neruda myself, but I
Mhm.
was after watching the film. I don't know whether, with regards to Neruda itself, that was real.
Mm.
It got me completely puzzled.
Um, some aspects seem quite fictionalized, and uh, the crescendo of the goose chase, where the antagonist and the protagonist are essentially in the same place, and the antagonist somehow tries to escape. I mean, somehow escapes against
I
all
mean, there
odds.
were two scenes early on itself where Neruda himself just hides behind the scenery when Oscar is searching for him, and even then
Mm.
itself, I was like, "Wait, what's going on?" Because this can't be real.
True, and it didn't really speak like a general biopic. And if for those of them who enjoy the typical noir 1940s American stylized films, I think they might really enjoy this. In addition to that, in addition to what I was talking about, uh, the noir lighting seemed quite evident. The shadow, uh, the lighting that makes the face quite prominent, and even the color grading seemed quite noirish.
I mean, I think I probably agree with that. But the thing which stood out to me most was, I think the color palette of the film and uh, the odd choice in I think lens, and it just gives such. And sometimes once in a while we get rear screen projections when they're
Mhm.
driving around the car, and it was like a complete mix of so many things.
True, true, true. And it would be quite easy to tell where the director probably gets its inspirations from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I see. I mean, like it was really very, it's a color film and it's playing around. I think it looks like it was shot in digital, and
Mm,
it's got all these color mixing going on in the lighting, and then you got kind of high contrast lighting like in chiaroscuro, or I mean like in noir, and then you got clear screen projections, and you got him also, the cop, wearing a nice a classic hat, and,
true.
and it was like it was
That was
pretty what do you say, uh, I don't want to say confusing, but definitely did give me a whiplash seeing so many things thrown out.
and incidentally, it's mostly with uh, uh, scenes where uh, Neruda is probably in some sense contradicting his own self or his own stance on morality. There is a deeper sense of color saturation from what I've observed. It's when he's with the prostitutes, or when he's in some sense being a bourgeois in a very direct sense. The color saturation sort of exceeds,
It gets a
the
pink
color.
violet color, right?
Sorry.
I like sometimes in, like, some debauchery scenes or whatever.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know what to even say because it's. I tried to see if there was anything, but it was really all over the place. Once in a while, it's kind of pink, purplish, and most of the times for the cop, it was kind of a bluish kind of tone, and
True.
sometimes it was white, and rarely it was yellowish. And but I couldn't really figure out anything myself. I mean,
This,
yeah, you were
so,
going on about your thoughts about what you figured it out, man. Please go
no,
ahead.
I just associated, the saturated colors with his, uh, points of moral depravity. But nothing, I didn't really notice that much about yellow.
Hello, Jeffrey.
Hey, Jeffrey. Hi.
Um, I guess we can continue until Jeffrey starts. I'm not sure what's up.
Sorry?
I guess we can continue until Jeffrey starts. I'm not sure what's up.
Sure, sure, sure. I didn't really notice much about yellow, and I thought I didn't really give much. I didn't really notice much about the color grading on the policeman. But um, what actually seemed quite interesting was the editing.
Hmm.
And just give me a second. Yeah, sorry. So the editing seemed to, bend time in a in a very peculiar manner, and uh, it seemed like some aspects were rushed and some aspects were not. And I think we had a very similar conversation about time and editing with Kieslowski's film, uh, short film about love, a short story about love. And
I
this, sorry?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, and with Kieslowski, it was quite different, and it was monotonous. There were no random jumping of timelines, and you could probably sense how the film is slowly transitioning into something that's happening. But with uh, Lorraine, it seemed quite different. It seemed like from probably the
Hello.
15 minute. Hello, hello.
Hi, I'm sorry. I had some audio issues with the Jitsi link. Still can't hear both of you. Try joining again later.
Hold on, I'll just rejoin the conversation. How about now?
Yeah, it works now, but there's still a lot of noise. Sorry about joining so late. But
Sorry?
sorry about joining so late. First of all,
That's fine. That's
yeah,
fine.
I missed a few minutes of the discussion. Like I can carry forth from there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we were
no,
talking about the editing.
Talking about
The editing, but you can start with your initial reaction.
initial reaction. Okay. I found it to be a very inventive
Jeffrey, there's a
take
bit
on.
of echo from your end.
Okay, let me just try again. Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it better?
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, found it to be a very playful and inventive biopic. Like, it was trying to be. I think it's all. I can also say that true of one of the other movies that we have lined up this month.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if we can still discuss it since it's on the upcoming lineup, but like I would like to bring that up later on. But yeah, and yeah,
Sure.
like
If it's
I
near your plans, you can bring it up. Not an issue.
yeah, yeah, and I don't have a lot to say on the subject. I haven't read a lot of Neruda's poems, or
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with his bibliography much, apart from some of his love poems. Like just a basic understanding, and even like a general history of his involvement with the party and whatnot. Like a very I wouldn't say even a Wikipedia level understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But I found like I felt like I learned something about him through the movie, like as a person,
Mm-hmm.
even though even though we weren't told a lot about his, like it wasn't like like a fact after fact sort of a thing.
True.
I found the surreal elements quite entertaining. Like I found the film very entertaining from that aspect.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like a popcorn movie, but also with something more to say about the art of storytelling at the same time.
True.
And I felt it captured him. I mean, it wasn't just about Neruda. It was about like artists in general, like the act of creating art, what that leaves with, the effect it has on the people, why it's important for uh why it's important to be like I think the importance of being represented uh through art. Um, but it had a lot it was sort of like a tribute, but also like not a tribute. It also emphasized the side of him that was abusive, or that was like a
Not really
contradicting. Not
romantic.
really. Yeah, that does not really hold up today. I think it was a lot more worse. I think some of it was even sanitized regarding how, like regarding how we treated women.
Mm.
Apparently, um, yeah, and like I found it to be a truthful biopic, even though it does not fit the conventional ideas of a biopic. And I
True.
found that very interesting, and especially what they did with Gail Garcia's character, the police inspector character.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, one could say that it was essentially a metaphor for. It's pretty on the nose, but it was a metaphor for one of his creations, like an author's creation who outlives uh, him. Uh, Even though, like, I think, I think I'm jumping too much here, but I
No,
felt the
no.
climactic moment where they finally acknowledge each other,
Mm.
where Garcia's lying dead in the snow, and he wishes that Neruda would recognize him just before he dies.
Mm.
That was really touching from that once you see it from that point, because it's kind of what like all works aspire to, and it's kind of interesting how they depict that in this film. That like I felt in a way it's more truthful than like any other way you can showcase this, like so uh, and it holds true to South America's traditions of storytelling, right? It has elements of magical realism. It even has a little bit of surrealism at the start with
True.
the politicians and the urinal scene, like where they all seem to be, like it's not just the police inspector part or the noir parts, but there are little bits of surrealism sprinkled into the rest of the film. Even with Neruda's parts alone, which gives me which is what makes me feel like I think they're more or less similar than the way they are shown to be different in the film. Like,
True.
uh, and yeah, I think that covers it. And yeah, like I think the scene with the transgender character and the police and the inspector
Hmm.
sums up the film in a nutshell, like what it stands for. I think that like that scene itself should like cover my take of the film. That it's a eulogy slash tribute slash ode to a writer, a politician, someone, a man of the people, but also like a human being.
Hmm.
So, and also a noir, and also in a noir film on top of that, like a noir detective goose chase on top of that, which is it's crazy. Like it's a crazy mix, and it's something that I really love.
The film
The
seemed to
film
have been
seems to have
bordered
been
on
bordered on
the
the
neo-noir
neo-noir
police and
police and
fugitive
chase
goose chase
structure, but
structure, but
it
it gave
gave
a
a
lot
lot
for us
for
to
us
think
to
about.
think about.
And
And
Kritik,
Kritik,
before you had
before he had
joined,
joined,
Kritik had also
had
made a
also
similar
made a similar
observation
observation
regarding the
regarding the
uh, characters,
characters,
the
the
characters Pablo
characters
Neruda
Pablo
built,
Neruda built,
evolving
evolving
organically on their own.
organically on their own. Yeah. And like I felt like even like I think you mentioned this earlier. I was listening to the YouTube link slightly before I joined the joined the session, and I think you mentioned
Mhm.
how the screenplay was was very interesting. I'd like to add to that also. Like I think
Go ahead.
structure-wise, they borrowed heavily from the Goose Chase, from the cop robber thing,
Mhm.
but they but like I felt moment scene by scene. If you look at it scene by scene, it was more of a it was about the couple's struggles. It was about a lot more than that. They kind of used the structure just to evoke at the chase. Like even the chase doesn't seem very urgent. There's no urgency in the uh, there are no stakes really in the film, even though, but somehow we are still, entranced, or somehow we are still, watching. Uh,
The
the
reason for
reason
our
for the
choice,
our choice,
particularly
particularly
it was
it
uh,
was uh,
that was the
that
general
was the
nature of
general
film
nature of film,
time,
like,
especially in the
especially
United
in the United States. Yeah.
Noir, I believe, was
Noir,
in
I
the
believe, was
40s,
in the 40s, and
and 50s, the
50s,
golden age
the
started.
golden age started. Yeah, and like, I just need some clarification on this thing. Like, what do you know what decade the film takes place in? Because I didn't really look at the timeline before
1948.
1948. So I assume it must have been the heyday of the noir genre, like, or it must be like
So
a reference to the
there was
detective
an
book. There was an
introduction of
introduction
Augusto
of
Pinochet.
Augusto Pinochet. Ah, okay.
So this was
So this
before
was
he
before
overthrows
he
the
overthrows
president.
the
I think
president.
the
I
president
think
is
the
probably
president is
alive.
probably alive. Yeah, yeah. Pinochet is shown as a general briefly
Yeah.
in the film, right, at the border.
Hmm.
Hmm. So I assume, like from what I understood, it took place some good 10 years. I think Pinochet happened way after Neruda's time.
True.
True. So yeah, yeah, okay. I feel if I was more familiar with Chile's history, I would be able to appreciate the film better.
Oh, we
So
have the same
so we have
problem.
the same problem. Yeah, I feel like maybe on a rewatch, like once I've like maybe on my next rewatch, and if like I'll be able to appreciate the film a lot better, and I will have more to say about it.
True. It
True.
seemed
It
like it was
seemed
made
like
for
it
the
was
local
made for the
audience.
local audience. Yeah, yeah. Uh, I think this even came out the same year as Jackie. Like Larrain had two films out in 1 year, and I think this one
Mhm.
it didn't get as much as the press as Jackie did. I think for this reason alone, like it must have gone misunderstood during its time of release because of the local because a lot of it would have been localized, would have been made for a local medium, local audience.
But the
But the
noir aspect
noir
seemed
aspect
quite
seemed quite
universal.
universal.
I
Yeah,
think that was
I
a
think that was
choice
a
with
choice
the
with the
style as well.
style as well. Yeah, like I think even for us, right? Like as outsiders, I felt the noir and the goose chase aspect was the hook into the narrative.
True.
True. Whereas for a Chilean audience, it would have been the scenes with the author, the scenes with the author in his house, the
Mm.
poetry readings, the politics, and so on. Speaking of which, I felt the way the right wingers were shown in this movie was very, I don't know, brutal. They're shown to be nincompoops throughout, and it
Mm.
was very entertaining to watch, frankly. I would love to see Lorraine do a take of that of the Indian government at some point if he decides to go, because it's not like uh they're shown to be very. I found their characterizations to be very interesting. It's very unlike what you would usually see from a political thriller, especially one based off real events.
True.
It wasn't very flattering at all.
And
uh,
it did not really conform to the general nature of a biopic as well. Uh,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's all I have to add. I think we can, like, I mean, where can we start from? I think we were talking about editing, right? So what?
yeah, so with editing, particularly with focus on the time, I think we had a very brief conversation on how Christophe had a very monotonous take on how the timeline transgress within his film. But with Neruda, it was quite different. It felt like there were other shifts in the whole film. And we switched from morning to day quite abruptly, and
Oh yeah,
it became quite random.
yeah.
And it was also an interesting choice because there were no filler discussions or dialogue. You
Hmm.
had the character switching locations. We get a spatial sense of where they are, and at the same time, the conversation is quite minimal and kept within the arc of the story.
Yeah.
That was quite
Are you talking about the different like, say, are you talking about the part where, like, say, two characters are speaking and they keep changing locations for no reason at all, even though the conversation continues?
yes,
Is
that was
that
the spatial aspect that I mentioned, and
right?
I think as soon as he goes into hiding and he leaves his wife,
Hmm.
uh, there is a immediate change from I think evening to morning. It, it was probably the next day,
Hmm.
and these were quite abrupt. At least in my first viewing, it feels quite abrupt.
Okay. So this is my second viewing. I think my first viewing was in 2016, and I
Okay.
think this is one of the things I noticed this time. Like, Pablo feels more at ease with himself at night in the night
Mhm.
scenes than in the morning scenes.
Mhm.
Because I think apart from the part where he wears where he's fitted with the silk suit,
Mhm.
and he, leaves abruptly,
Mhm.
even then he's shown his errors. Like, he gets the real moment with the my point. Like, anyway, he engages in his debauchery at night, like, with all the it was raining at night, and I think that's what it was trying to say. Like, there's this constant conflict between day and night. So
True.
I think that's what the director was trying to say. Although I could be wrong, and I'll need to watch the movie again to clarify.
No, interestingly, Kritik and I were talking about the color grading that followed the moments of debauchery. Kritik, could
Uh,
you repeat the other aspects you mentioned about this, the color grading aspect you mentioned about the police?
Yeah, I tried to find a connection between what is going in the story and what was going on visually, but it was kind of contradictory and it kind of became mixed in the end. So I don't know how valid it is, though. I didn't feel like it was very wide.
There is a lot of echo from your end, Kritik.
I think it is
I think it is
from Jeffrey's
from
side. It might be because
Jeffrey's
the
side. It
mic.
might be because the mic.
Oh, sorry. Just give me a minute. I'll mute myself.
I mean, you can just try muting it. Yeah. Is it fine now?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So, to keep it short, I just thought very roughly, I thought there was violet toned for the debauchery scene, and it was kind of a blue tone for the scenes involving Oscar. But it was kind of all over the place, so I don't think it amounts to anything.
Mm. There was also mention of how a dark hue of purple is saturated, especially with scenes of that involved him going against his morality, his perceived morality.
Yeah.
So those seem like the extreme ends. The narrator, probably not the narrator, but the director wanted us to focus on, and Neruda wanted us to take our eyes away from.
By the way, one interesting thing which I heard Jeffrey say, which immediately clicked in my mind, was when he said that at the end of the movie, when Oscar is dying, Neruda recognizes him, and
Mm.
I think that connects to what happened at the first when, with regards to Oscar and his dad, who is the police chief for his imagined dad, where he says, "My father never recognized me."
Oh, that's an interesting observation. So, in some sense, he held Neruda as a father figure,
I
and
mean, he is his creator, though,
true, true, true,
whatever
true,
that can mean.
true. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's more emblematic of how we as readers consume our favorite writers' art. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm sure most of us would have idolized and writer early in our life, right, when we were still impressionable teens or whatnot.
Hmm.
Uh, I think it was stating to that, like, like, say, even in our professions, we tend to idolize some figure or the other, to the point of looking towards him or her as a mentor or a guide, mentor, or here literally a father figure. You see this even with how he talks about his mother. He talks, even though, I mean, he doesn't denounce her, uh, even despite her profession or despite her circumstances of birth. It's more of an, like, it's an acknowledgement. It's also like very melancholic. It's more of him. I think it's more like him empathizing with his surroundings. Uh, I felt the, so here's the thing. I have two theories on this. I feel the character is a figment, one of Neruda's creations, or B, the reader, as in us, the audience, identifying with Neruda, the writer. So it could be taken in both ways, like uh, both these elements, and also to add to Kritik's point about the color scheme. Uh, I wasn't I wasn't happy with the color grading. I like the cinematography, but I wasn't happy with the color grading because of how stark, like how it goes away from the noir formula.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I see why they did it. Like, I felt the pink, the blue tones for Oscar must be like, like coldness, loneliness, or something to emphasize his lone search in the chase, right? And red the red and the pinks could be like Neruda engaging in his vices, his passion, and like it's pretty straightforward. I kind of like that's a very straightforward take, but I also didn't like how it didn't gel with the noir aesthetic. And it stood out. It stood out a lot more than it should have been. I feel. I
Noir
felt.
Noir
usually dealt
usually
with
dealt with.
the lighting
the lighting
aspect of
aspect,
the
But
Yeah,
everything about
everything
the
about the
visual,
visual.
this one didn't have the lighting, the stark lighting choices, right? There weren't any hard lights apart from the cars, rear projection car scenes. I feel there weren't any hard lights and shadows. It was very like there's a thing called chiaroscuro. I'm not sure, like
Mm,
where it's not as hard. It's very soft, like soft lighting on the face. That too from 3/4, right? 3/4 of the face is covered in soft light, and it's very conventional. It's a very conventional choice. It's used in. I mean, it was used in a lot of 70s films, 70s American films. It's also used in a lot of today's films too.
true.
Which is like it's not emblematic of noir films, but it's more presupposed. It's more related to say the Gordon Williams films or like American films in the 70s. So it had a lot. I mean, I felt it was it was what's the right word for it? Anachronistic.
Hmm.
Com- I mean, I felt it was out of place.
I
That
mean,
was the
I
that's
mean,
only small
that's the
nitpick I
perfect
had.
term which you
term
just
which you
said,
just
Jeffrey.
said, Jeffrey.
Especially with all the
Especially with
lens
all the
flare
lens
and the
flare and the
color tone
color
and
tone
everything
and
was
everything
really
was
off.
really off.
Yeah, I felt like, which is why I felt the milieu, like the milieu of the film. It wasn't as convincing as it should have been, and I feel it's Spartan choice because of the lighting. The lighting, I mean, not the lighting, the lighting slash color grading. I think it's more to do with the color grading than the cinematography itself, because the shots themselves are very they follow the noir aesthetic. It's just that the lighting and the color grading doesn't always follow that. And you can see it with like whenever the rear projection scenes come up, they take me out of the movie. Uh, not because of the like it wouldn't do the same for me if I were watching a noir film where every shot is lit in the similar fashion, right?
True, true,
But
true.
True.
There was a lot
here,
There
of
was a
play
lot
with
of play with
lighting as well.
lighting.
yeah, here only the rear projection shots are shot with hard lights, which took me out of the film.
Mm,
Mm.
Uh,
that's an
That's
interesting.
an interesting.
I mean, it's a very small nitpick. I don't even hold. I don't really hold it against the film, but I feel I feel this movie would be a lot more effective in black and white, say, compared to the way it was done. But it's also
There
Lorraine's
seems
There
like there
very
was a
seems like there
strong
was a strong
emphasis on the
emphasis on
need for
the
color.
need for color.
because of the topic, because of the subject.
Yeah, because of the way color was used to highlight Neruda's
Yeah,
character.
because way color was used to highlight Neruda's character.
Yeah. I mean, it's a solid argument. I'm not contesting it, but I felt it could have found a better balance between the two, because
True.
those two elements did contrast with each other heavily during the film, and to the point where it did take me out. So it did. I think it would have like. I assume I'm not the only one here. It must have taken you both out at some points, right? Like because it calls attention to itself, and films shouldn't do that unless they're trying to make a point. And
That's fair.
That's what.
I didn't see a point there.
Mm.
Mm.
I felt the
I felt the
noir choice
noir
was
choice
mostly
was
because of
mostly because
the
of the
historical significance
historical
it had, that
significance it had, that
period, the
period the
whole
whole
situation took place.
situation took place.
But you have a
But
very
you have a
fair
very
point.
fair point.
Yeah. I can see both sides of the arguments, which is why I would categorize this under a nitpick rather than a criticism as
Mhm.
such. It's a very personal take. So, uh, yeah, I don't have a lot to add about the film because I'm still lost in it. If that makes any sense. Uh,
Uh,
it's still, I still feel like this. I missed out on a few things because of the context and whatnot. So, do you have anything to add, Kritik? Thank you.
No,
No,
nothing.
nothing.
Like I
I would
have to
have
agree
to
with
agree.
you.
I found the
I found
editing
the editing
quite
quite
akin to
akin to
In the Mood for Love. It
In the Mood for
reminded
Love.
me
It
of it
reminded me
here
of
and
it
there.
here and there.
Hmm. Ah,
The-
right.
The-
But
But
did you feel
did you
the
feel
film should have
the
ended
film
in
should have ended in a
much different
much
fashion
different
because it
fashion
was
because
not
it
really
was not
intended as a
really intended
biopic
as a biopic
with an
with
intended
an intended
beginning and an
beginning
end?
and an end.
So
So
toward the
toward
end,
the end,
right after
right
the
after the
characters
characters
crossed the
crossed
Andes
the
Mountain,
Andes Mountain,
and
and
a little
a
before
little
that, it
before that, it
seemed like
seemed like
the director
the
was trying to
director was
hunt
trying to
for
hunt for
points to
points to
sort of bring a
sort of bring
conclusion
a
to the film.
conclusion to the film.
There were some
There
dead,
were
empty
some dead empty
spaces which
spaces
did not
which
really.
did not
It
really
seemed like it didn't
seem
really
like it
mean
didn't
anything,
really
but
mean
I think
anything, but I think
I'll need a
I'll
second
need a
viewing to
second
confirm
viewing
that.
to confirm that.
Do you think
Uh,
Do you
the
think
film should
the
have ended
film
in
should
a
have ended
different
in a
fashion
different fashion
or at a different
or at a
scenario?
different scenario?
uh, can I go first?
Yeah,
Kritik, do you have
please do.
anything to
Yeah,
add?
please.
So I feel there wasn't like I can't like if you take the metaphors provided by the film quite straightforward, like in a straightforward way. I don't think there's any other conclusion at hand, right?
Mm,
The creator coming to face with his creation, with what his creation has turned into, and it coming after him, so it haunting him or whatnot. The It's not haunting him, but he's compelled to go against it, but he decides not to. But then it calls out to him, and then he goes out. He goes out to it out of a concern, uh, out of a painful concern, motherly concern, maybe, and then he sits with it as it, and he consoles it as it dies in his arms. The meaning, the Neruda's version of the inspector, not as I mean, the inspector becomes a real person at the end of the film, right? He's not shown like throughout the film. He's shown to be fulfilling the uh, inspectory aspects of the film, and we don't really get a chance of
he seemed more
of
He
his
seemed
hot-headed.
more hot-headed.
yeah. He seemed hot-headed. He seemed very dumb at times.
Mm,
Uh, I think the people in his life seem to call it out too.
mhm,
There's uh, the second inspector too. He was a silent participant. I think he also knew what was going on, but I mean, I don't know if he was intended to be fictional or not.
mhm,
Also, but we never get any resolution there. We're still shown him with the I think what's his name, the Victor. I think the character's
mhm.
name at the end of the film. So I think he's supposed to be real. Uh, and yeah, like the my point was that the inspector didn't have a impact on anyone's life, like anyone in his life. I mean, he didn't really have a certain like a significant. I think the people in his life didn't have much to say about him apart from the fact that he was a inspector.
Mhm.
And yeah, even us as an audience, we're only shown him doing the chase, fulfilling the plot of the film, and it's only at the very end where we see bits and pieces of him talking about himself, him revealing his dad and mom, his interests in life, his fascination with Neruda's not
Mm.
ex, uh, estranged wife, first wife.
True, true,
Oh,
true.
one more thing I think we missed out. We haven't really shed light on the wife characters,
Mm.
which would be like I think it's very important, and I'll come to that later. But
Sure.
yeah, with him, I feel with that character, I feel he got some apotheosis, or he got some release. He got released out of that contract at the very end, and he's allowed to be himself. as a real person, and it's sort of hinted. Which is why also I think with the scene with the trans character in the police office also uh, foreshadows this to an extent, where that person gets that early on in the story. The author literally comes to him, Neruda literally comes to him and tells him that your art is valid just as much as mine is,
Mhm.
and he's elevated, and that's what good art does. And the inspector craves that from Neruda himself, from because he didn't get that from his father, he didn't get that from his mother. He's lost searching for answers all his life, literally.
Mhm.
He didn't get that from the president either. He's even when he meets the president, like the president asks him, "What are you in doubt?" Something like that, right? At the very first line, "Are you loyal to me?" Something along that line. I can't remember the actual title. So even there, he's questioned. He's not treated as a human human being. He's treated as an object, literally
True.
a tool of the right wing, the fascist government. So yeah, yeah. I mean, my point. Anyways, my point is that the ending is completely validated. It's the only ending that I feel could have been made.
Mhm.
Only conclusion. So I don't know. Is there any way you feel it should have ended? Is there any counter?
I felt
I
it
felt
should
it
have
should have
slightly extended
slightly
toward
extended toward
Pinochet,
Pinochet,
probably in some
probably in
sense
some
giving
sense gaining
uh, a
uh,
sense
a
of power
sense of power.
and moving toward uh, overthrowing Allende, because it would have been, given us a much better perspective of how the revolution was, or the cause was completely destroyed. And the film probably stops somewhere uh, halfway. And I felt it should have gone at least giving us a hint or insinuating at what happens. Although historically we know what happens, but I felt the film should have extended toward that. Hello.
Yeah, I thought I was kind of uh, it was kind of I was actually, what do you say, surprised at how kind of ironic and jokey the entire movie was throughout its entire length, even when it's uh, dealing with him, like, being in hiding, or him running away from cops, or persecution of uh, people who the government don't like. But and I was it was rather interesting to contrast that with what we generally think of such South American countries when they are under control of these dictators.
Could you repeat your last point?
No, like, it was a different interpretation, or representation, at least, of how these of how the people of, or at least how the the film did an interesting representation of how the people lived under under a dictatorial regime, because otherwise it will be like, as it wouldn't be as
Nobody
fun
was
if
a
it
dictator
showed
there, Kritik.
Augusto Pinochet, uh, or even Allende or somebody. This movie is actually kind of fun to watch. It had a lot of jokes, and
So, Kritik,
yeah,
Allende was a democratically elected
I
president.
know, I know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry, sorry. Oh,
he
in that case,
came
I'm sorry.
immediately after this.
I'm sorry in that case.
And Pinochet came after him, and
Mm.
till sometime, I think, the 90s. Uh, so yeah, I think it's. I'm glad that the film didn't go that way, because it would have lost its personality.
Mm-hmm. It's fair. It's fair.
And I don't know, would it have been a Neruda biopic then?
I don't think the film was trying to hint at a biopic since
And
from
yeah,
the
that's the
beginning.
real question. Is it a Neruda? Is it a biopic
Yeah,
now
biopic.
itself?
Rain. Lorraine famously calls us biopics, all three of them. I think one is going to come out this year on Diana. He calls them anti-biopics in his own words, because he tries to do an evocation of the person's life and a very abstract take on the person's life rather than stick to the timeline. So even Jackie has shades of this, and I suppose even Diana would also the Spencer would also have shades of this. Uh, so it's not supposed, because if we took it as a straight biopic, it would be too bourgeoisie
True.
of a film. He could also, try,
It
bring that
seemed like
argument
It
up.
seemed like
way of
way of
Communist Party.
Communist Party.
No, like I don't think. I mean, so I don't think Pablo's life would have played as much as so the contrast in his life versus his politics would have been more of a bigger point if it were a straight biopic.
True.
True. The film doesn't what do you call, hold him to account over it. Rather, it empathizes with it. It yeah, it wouldn't have happened the same way if it was a straight biopic. I think if there were like I think there was like a biography about Neruda that I read about a while back. Like I haven't like after that biography came out, a lot of his problematic behaviors were out in the open. Um, and if all, I mean, the point is that like if we were shown too much of that, it would have detracted from. If we were dwelled, I mean, if we were shown more details
Hmm.
of the characters of Neruda's struggles or Neruda's vices, his behaviors towards the people in his life, his take on his approach towards women in his life, it would have been a lot more depressing to watch. Uh, so, and also it would have taken away from the magical realism. The film wants you to believe in the poet. The film wants you to believe in the author, however little time you have with them. Uh, and you could make an argument for how it tries to, like, how maybe with some of our idols, with celebrity worship, maybe it could be a parallel of how we take, how we overlook some of their mistakes or some of their horrible behaviors because of their creations. So you could even make an argument about that.
True,
With how
and
True,
I
and
think there
I
was
think
not
there was
much
not much
emphasis on
emphasis on
celebrity
celebrity
worship
worship
except for
except
the
for the
transgender
transgender
thing.
thing.
It was right. Like there's the like you have the everyday characters eulogize. I mean, I look up to idolize Neruda throughout the film. There's even a scene towards the end, right, where they're at a party and this lady walks up to them and asks him if she could kiss him. And like that one scene where she talks about how the government won't really chase you because they really just need to. I mean,
No, but she
No, but
that
she
immediately flips
immediately
right
flips
after
right after
and
yeah,
makes a
and makes
mockery
a
of the
mockery
whole
of the whole
of the
uh,
whole chase
revolution.
about
revolution.
yeah. And like my point is that she still, like, even though she loves his works, she still sees him as a full person. She still sees him with his faults that the other everyday characters in this film, including his wife, even doesn't.
And yeah, you
His
were
And yeah, you were
going to add something
going to add
about
something about
uh, sorry, what? Uh,
you said
you
you
said
wanted
you
to talk a
wanted
bit
to
about
talk a
this
bit
movie.
about this movie.
oh right, yeah. So the wife character. Uh, Sorry, I'm getting an echo at this end. Let me just try muting.
Hmm.
Okay. So the wife character Delia, I did some digging up on her after watching this film this time,
Hmm.
and so apparently she's also a well-renowned painter. artist and painter in her own right. She's on equal footing with Neruda in terms of impact, artistic impact, and uh, popularity within Chilean and within South America. Uh, and yet she felt during her life that she was over, like she supported him, she supported his exploits, like she was more or less, she looked past a lot of his behaviors. I don't think like she never held him accountable over the cheating or the lack of interest. I mean, apart from even when he fails to uh, even when he fails to be with her, she never holds him accountable over it, which I feel is her. Um, I feel is the film's way of saying that she looks past. I mean, she ignores a lot, which I feel is the film's way of saying that she's also in the Neruda cult, as in like she adores the poet, so she doesn't confront the real Neruda over it. Which happens to a fault. Like she realizes this later in the film, only once they separate, and I think that's where this part comes up, right? Her arc is never resolved in the film, and it's a bit of an incomplete point. Uh, and it like so that's something that that lady the lady I mentioned previously has over the wife, where she's able to look past the allure and the beauty and the poet and see him for who he is, and his own wife is unable to do that. And there's a tragedy there that the film does not quite dwell on, but it acknowledges it. So
Guys, I
Guys,
gotta
I
go.
gotta go.
And it was
It
great
was
hanging out
great
with you.
hanging out
I'll
with
join you
you.
guys
I'll join
next
you
week.
again next week.
Bye.
I didn't get
I
what
didn't.
Pratik said.
he's he'll be leaving now. Gotta
Oh,
go.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thanks for
Okay.
joining,
Thanks for
Pratik.
joining, Pratik.
Thanks
Thanks
for
a
joining,
lot,
man.
guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
It's
you.
powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Since you
Since you
mentioned,
mentioned,
Yeah.
since you
since
mentioned
you mentioned
uh,
uh,
the wife
the
being
wife being
a brilliant
a
artist
brilliant
all on her
artist all
own,
on her own,
I was
I
wondering
was
if
wondering if
if there was a
if there
strong
was a
emphasis
strong
on her
emphasis on
character
her
and her
character and her
professional life
professional life
and her
and her
ability to,
ability to,
in some
in
sense,
some sense,
stand on equal
stand on
footing with
equal
Neruda.
footing with Neruda.
And
And
I was thinking
I was
if
thinking if
that would have
that would have
given out
given out
a few
a
more of
few
his
more
wise
of his
points.
wise points.
I don't know how I feel about that because
Hmm.
again I don't know how true to real life all this is, like this aspect of the movie is. Uh, I'm sure that she must have uh, like
It
I'm sure
seemed
It
that
like the
seemed
director
like
was
the
taking
director was
a
taking
judgmental
a
stance
judgmental
on
stance
how
on how
Neruda
Neruda
was, in some
was in
sense,
some sense
hypocritical of his
of
own
his
time.
own
yeah, but he never. I mean, it's never shown. What do you call? It's never shown. How do I say this clearly?
Made
Like you
prominent.
made
never.
prominent.
There's no scene. It's very much implied than you don't really get a moment for the wife character where she like I think all her scenes are in relation to Neruda's. Like all her scenes have her thinking about him or talking about him. She very much serves as his bedrock, his uh, moral support. And
Hmm.
once he leaves, she's shown immediately with the police inspector to lay down the secondary character, primary character, secondary character metaphor. And
True.
that monologue and her giving that monologue, uh, it seems tragic in a way. Like it's revelatory. It's for the police inspector. It's a what do you call? It's a mind blowing.
Revelation.
statement,
Revelation.
mind blowing revelation. But for her, in like when you view it in context of her actions and how she's been treated throughout the film,
Hmm.
it's tragic, and it also like I mean, there are like a lot of such couples in history, right? Be it even in film or like Zella and Scott Fitzgerald. Uh, then who else? Think can think of like a bunch of Hollywood people like on Eleanor and Francis Ford Coppola.
Mm-hmm.
The wife is the one who sacrifices, who makes the sacrifices to justify the whims and fancies of her husband, the quote unquote creator. Even though the wife also plays a significant role in the creative process and never gets the accolades for it.
Yeah, the
Yeah, the
necessary credit.
necessary credit.
So, yeah, I feel like, I mean, I felt we deserved a better conclusion there, or maybe, maybe it's supposed to be tragic. Maybe that's Lorraine's way of highlighting this. Like, maybe the character was tragic enough that she never recognized this in her own life, or she looked past it even when it was obvious to her. She let his celebrity overtake her lover. You know, like.
True. And
True. And
when he was
when he
about
was
to leave,
about to leave,
she didn't really
she didn't
protest
really
that much.
protest that much.
Yeah, and he was ready to leave. He There was no hesitation
True.
to,
True.
right? Like you would expect some, consolation. You would expect like if this were to happen to you, you'd probably like take a moment to be with her and like reassure her. But he's like, okay, let's go. which which is very hypocritical. Which is like douchebag behavior in today's parlance.
It
It
probably played
probably
well
played
into
well
the
into the
geniuses being
geniuses
douchebag
being douchebag
character
Yeah,
stereotype.
yeah.
stereotype.
So, so I mean, I'm sorry for laughing. It's just that it was so. I mean, it was so darkly funny to me when I saw it, and yeah, man. I felt she was a very tragic character, and this was something I feel was not highlighted in anything I'd read up, any take I'd read about the film beforehand. Like even this was something I even noticed only on this watch, which is which is why just why in a way I felt it could have been more pronounced. I think Pablo Larrain romanticizes Neruda a bit too much. If
Mhm.
you consider the person's history, although I think Larrain is the true judge here. I don't know. Like I don't know. I haven't read enough about his. Like I've only read bits and pieces of his history, and in that the problematic aspects were like more of a highlight than the rest. So I could also be wrong there, but I think that's more to do with. I think it stands to reason, right? With relationships like this in general. The the husband and wife creative partners thing. Uh,
True.
True.
Which is why I
Which is why
felt
I felt
much better
much better
emphasis that
emphasis that
the wives
the
created,
wives create,
preferably could have given us
could
yeah,
have
more
given us
to
more
yeah,
evaluate
to evaluate
yeah. To the
Neruda.
film's
in a
credit, it does that. Like even like like there are scenes with her showing her painting off to Pablo.
Hmm.
So there are I think the ending scene also has her looking gleefully at the painting that she had created.
True.
But we don't see like even with the crowd scenes we don't see anyone reacting to her like react yeah, celebrating her celebrityness like they do with Pablo, right? She's
Hmm.
always in service of Pablo in those scenes, which is where I feel the film could have uh, highlighted that. But it also, again, this is subject to my interpretation of the film. I don't know how much of an impact she had versus him, like culturally. So maybe Lorraine was sticking to the facts there. And also art as a medium is more it's not a working class medium, it's not a working class
It is
it's
an
not
it is an
aristocratic,
aristocratic,
it's a
and
very
probably
and
that's
aristocratic
why
probably
thing.
that's why
we
we
didn't really
didn't
have
really have
her being
her being appreciated
appreciated as much
appreciated as
since
much since
the
Yeah,
most
the
yeah,
surround
most around.
the
the
Bolshevik.
Bolshevik.
Yeah, and uh, and yeah, to the films. I think the film covers this to a appreciable extent. I just feel it. Maybe her character was short-staffed. Mm, maybe a scene or two talking, like bringing it to the foreground would have helped.
True.
True.
And yeah, I guess that's it. I don't have a lot more to add. Do you have anything else we should take a note on? Uh,
I think
No,
we've
I think
covered
we've
pretty much
covered pretty much
much of the
much of
aspects.
the
We spoke
aspects.
about
We spoke
characters, we
about
spoke
characters,
about
we
the
spoke about
editing,
the editing,
color grading,
color grading,
cinematography,
cinematography,
particularly with
particularly
lighting,
with lighting
and the
and the
screenplay.
screenplay.
Uh, and the
And
story
the
as well. I
story
think
as
we
well.
were
I think we were
discussing the story
discussing the story
and its
and
realism
its
and
realism and
realism and fictional
realism
line,
and fictional and
and also the
yeah.
magical
also the
realism that
magical
you brought up.
realism that you brought up.
Sorry, I missed out one thing.
Hmm.
I brought this up, right? I feel this could be a really good double watch with Manto, because Manto does cover this aspect a lot better, the wife aspect, and even it does a similar melding of fact and fiction, albeit not as ambitious as not as ambitious as Neruda, but I think it
Hmm.
does more of a. I mean, it sticks to. I mean, I think just as great because it sticks to Manto's aesthetic and style or his storytelling style. This would be a very fascinating watch with Manto, and I'm looking forward to that discussion where you can sort of throw light at this.
I think we can
I think we
probably
can
revisit
probably revisit
Neruda
Neruda
in a
in a
discussion with
discussion with
on Manto.
on
But
Mando.
I guess we
But
should
I guess we
actually
should
do it
we do
after
it after
Yeah,
we have a
we
discussion with
have a
Manto.
discussion with Nandita.
yeah. A subtle plug there.
So
Yeah.
Jeffrey, if we
So
are
Jeffrey, if we
done
are done
talking about the film, I
talking
think I
about the
can
film, I
stop
think I can stop
streaming.
streaming.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah,
Uh,
Yeah,
just give me a second.
just give me a second.
yeah.